lord and the serf. Yeah.
I have a question about the last slide.
Yeah.
What did SD mean?
Oh, the Social Democrats. If you don't have to know that. If you ask, then I'll tell you.
Okay.
It's their political party. Because there's the Social Democrats, the Social Revolutionaries, there's a populist movement that's moving in there, and it's just too specific. I would make you memorize it if you were in a Russian class. He had talked about the fact that there are, you know, the different phases. So that second phase would be the feudal lord controlling the serf, which Russia hadn't even broken out of, really. They were still reorganizing. And then in capitalism is the next step. And in capitalism, you have the proletariat, which are the working class, that are being controlled by the owners, by the bourgeois, by the capitalists, the nasty people who are working you all to death. And so what he is promising is to work out of this into communism. So at the point of capitalism, which Marx actually said would have probably been in England, Germany, France, those three industrialized nations that had large middle classes, large proletariats, which Russia did not. At the point where the proletariat kind of breaks and snaps and goes crazy, can't put up with it anymore, that's when they would overthrow the owners, the bourgeois, take control, establish what is called a dictatorship of the proletariat, and then at that point, government would start withering away. In La La Land, we know this doesn't happen. We've tried it several different ways. We've tried it here in the United States. They tried it in England, doing utopian societies. It doesn't work in its pure form. It's like capitalism doesn't work in its pure form. But
dictators don't stand down like they're supposed to.
yes, and that's what happens with Stalin.
It
And that's why
works
this
on
doesn't.
paper, not in practice.
Yeah, and in theory, it sounds really great. And I would, when you read, if you ever read the Communist Manifesto, it's like, it's not even as long as Night. I mean, it's short. You're like, wow, I'm gonna go set up a commune. And then you realize, oh, they tried that before. And you realize that it really is not something that we are capable of at this point. It might be something that's in the future, but
if we were all perfect beings, yes, we could make a utopia.
and we all sang Kumbaya and got along, but you know, we know where that's going, right? So this, in fact, is probably not what should have been used, because Russia didn't even have a capitalist phase at this point. But Lenin is going to take and kind of tweak the system. He's going to tweak this theory and make some excuses along the way and make it fit. It's like breaking off an arm to make sure you can fit inside of a coffin. I mean, it's ridiculous. So during this time, we are going to see that inner revolutionary period, that little period in between. The provisional government is not going to withdraw from the war, which is probably the primary reason why it fails. Lenin is going to be working and agitating. He is going to be promising peace, which he does immediately, pulling out of the war. He's going to promise bread. Not really. He doesn't do that very much. And land. He's going to distribute land to the peasants, which the peasants really like, because agriculture is a mess at this point. The Bolsheviks, which is Lenin, they're going to stage a coup. They're going to take over, and this is bloodless. They're going to take over the communication centers. They're going to take over the railroad in Petrograd. This is not the rest of Russia. And they are going to immediately start doing the whole communist thing. They're going to distribute land and the industrial things, and the army becomes all happy. And at this point is when Lenin takes over. It is a coup. It is not really a communist overthrow. These guys are calling themselves communist. The way that Lenin withdraws from the war is by signing a quick armistice with the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians, and then he will formally withdraw the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. We'll talk about the provisions of that in just a second. In the meantime, Lenin has to deal with the royal family. And the deal is with the royal family, the danger of having your royal family still there is that you still see the legitimate king. And the possibility of, oh, this isn't working, let's go back to the old. So Lenin at some point we think, and there's no written proof, we have never proved this, we think that he called for the assassination of the royal family. They had been put under house arrest and taken to a town called Ekaterinburg, which is in the Ural Mountains. They had lived there for several months. As things got worse and worse and worse with the war effort, and with later on the Civil War, what ends up happening is Lenin is getting pushed to the brink. And when this decision is made, either by Lenin or by a local somebody below him, they decide that they're going to assassinate the royal family. They take them downstairs, including a couple of nurses and a doctor that were with them to help with the family, and they open fire on the entire family, including the children. This is the picture of the basement and the damage that was done by the gunshots. The girls did not supposedly die immediately. The corsets that they were wearing contained the royal gems. They had sewn into their corsets, which is, by the way, is a bra, this big long bra. You guys, I'm talking in a school that's mostly guys, into this area. And when they were shot, all of those gems deflected the bullets.
Like body parts, not as quite as effective.
It wasn't effective, but they were bayoneted afterwards. So they were buried in a shallow grave. The guys that did this poured acid over the bones and tried to destroy the evidence. That grave was not found until 1979. When a guy finds it, he was out looking for it. He knew of the stories. He was kind of a treasure hunter. When he finds it, he covers it back up because he realizes that the Soviets, the Soviet government, would have taken those bones and they would have disappeared. It's just, never, never land. After the Soviet Union falls apart, they will eventually exhume those bodies. In 1981, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, there's two parts of it, saints the family as kind of like the statement of, oh, we're fixing things, we're going to calm the situation. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church inside of Russia does the same. So they are technically saints in that religion. The bodies are exhumed in 1998. They are DNA tested. All but 2 of the bodies at that point were accounted for. Later they found 2 others in a separate grave, the 2 youngest children, including Anastasia. Okay, so Disney got it wrong. So did the crazy people running around claiming they were Anastasia. Anastasia was found in the original batch of bodies. The youngest child and the Tsarevich, Alexei, was found in a separate grave. They have been since re-DNA tested. So their bodies were reinterred at the Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul, the big onion dome one, and they had a big, huge funeral mass for them that actually Yeltsin was at. He was the leader after the Soviet Union fell apart. So it was kind of a conclusion to this whole mess. But this has been one of those stories that, even Disney made a movie about it. There is a play on Broadway right now called Anastasia, and I refuse to go to it because it's wrong.
But it still makes it a good story.
It's a good story, and supposedly the little girl woke up and hadn't been killed. And I was like, no. Yeah, machine guns don't die, and don't lie. What Lenin does is one of the first things he does is he withdraws from the war, and to push matters, Germany, when Germany tells Lenin how much land they're expecting in the deal, they balk and they said, we're going to renegotiate. Let's sit back down and renegotiate this. And the Germans send in a mass number of men, and they get like 150 miles from Petersburg or Petrograd. So Lenin is forced to the table. Lenin surrenders. At that point, the Eastern Front is gone. Now, Germany has a one-front war. They take all of their guns and their tanks and everything, they turn it around, and they go to the Western Front and begin what is called the Second Battle of the Marne. Remember, the first one is where everything stopped outside of Paris. They are going to give up a humongous chunk of land. They're going to give up significant pieces of the Black Sea. They're going to give up Poland, Belarus, the Baltic state, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they're gonna give up all of that. For linen, that is time. For linen, that is one step back in order to survive and be able to make 2 steps forward at a later date. And it is strategic, because he could not have survived had he not pulled out. So now Germany doesn't have a 2-front war, and that is going to piss off the Allies to no end. They are trying their hardest to keep that 2-front war going. They are angered by the fact that they have sent tanks and guns and food, and it is sitting in Russia. And now the communists have taken over. Lenin has taken over, and now all that stuff is sitting there. And so during the Russian Civil War, which will break out right after Lenin takes control and he's trying to grab all of the power, it's going to last until 1922, the Allies invaded Russia, Canada, the United States, and Britain all send forces in to go get their stuff back. It's kind of like when you break up, you got to go get your stuff out of your, other person's apartment, right?
Except this is maybe a bit more violent.
Yeah, it's a lot worse. And in fact, it really muddies the water for the West's relation with Russia. So the Soviets are now going to really distrust the Allies. And it's one of the reasons why Stalin is going to sign the non-aggression treaty with Hitler, because he's still pissed that they came in to get their stuff back. And he's going to be angry because they're not going to be allowed to play at the end of the war and benefit from the war, even though they gave up millions of their men. They are not going to be allowed to participate in the Treaty of Versailles. And that is a huge deal. Okay, so we'll leave that in, it's over.